All right, so we'll get started with our legislative meeting. So Mr. Burdell Williams, we'll start with you with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Burdell Williams. And so our next item is the solicitor's report.
Yes, good evening, everyone. For the solicitor's report this evening, I have an announcement regarding the board executive sessions since the last public meeting. The board met an executive session on Tuesday, July 27th, 2021, and also that meeting began at 7:00 p.m. and also again on Saturday, August 7th, 2021, beginning at 9 a.m. Both of those executive sessions related to the search that's underway for permanent superintendent. Those are my announcements this evening. Ms. Henry, before you continue on to the next item, the one item I wanted to note was you may want to note the board members that are on the call just for purposes of calling the roll.
Excellent. I did forget that, didn't I? So can we have a roll call for our board members? What I will ask is, what I'll do is I'll go down the list that I have in front of me. So David Cohen.
Here.
Mr. Burdell Williams.
Present.
Ms. Haywood.
Present.
Mr. Fishbein.
Present.
Ms. Lohman.
Here.
Mr. England.
Present.
Mr. Schultz.
Present.
Mr. Pender.
Present.
And Ms. Henry present. Thank you. Thank you for that reminder, Ms. Diazio. So next what we have is the approval of minutes, and that is for May 4th, May 11th, June 15th, legislative meetings. Motion to approve.
I move to approve Julie Haywood.
All right, so
Second, Jennifer Lohman.
Second, Ms. Lohman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the motion carries. All right, so next is our public comments on agenda items only. There are a few things that I want to make us aware of before we go to public comments, and that is for Cheltenham residents, taxpayers, and school district employees who are in our virtual audience. You can comment on agenda items only, and that what you can do, there are two things. One is to raise your hand and we will unmute you so that you can comment vocally. Or if you don't have access to Zoom, your questions can be submitted via CSD board meeting comments at cheltenham.org. We will not take any comments in the Q&A area. So just want to make, or interface, I want to make you aware of that. And that there is one comment permitted per person. So I don't see any right now, any comments or any hands raised in the chat area. And Mr. Diazio, do you have any public comments on agenda topics from the email?
I have not received anything, no.
So seeing that there are no hands raised right now in the chat room, we'll move on with our agenda. And we'll go on to the approval of the treasurer's report. So I want to open it up to board discussion, if there is any. And seeing none, I will go to a motion to approve the treasurer's report. All in favor, say aye.
Hold on. Ms. Henry, you'll need to someone will need to make the motion, and then you'll need a second.
Okay.
And then you can call the vote.
Thank you.
Ms. Henry, I'll make the motion.
So motion to approve by Mr. Pender. Is there a second?
Second, Joel Fishbein.
Thank you. And no discussion? Is there any discussion on that? And so all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? So seeing that the motion carries. Then we'll go to the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit report by Mr. England.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. I'll take my mask off to give this report. The Montgomery County Intermediate Unit met on June 23rd at Norristown and the MCIU building. There was an election that was held. The results of the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit Board annual election were announced, and the MCIU Board will seat the following members for terms effective July 1st, 2021. Pottsgrove will be represented by Ashley Custer, Perkiomen Valley, Sarah Evans Brockett, Upper Dublin, Darlene Davis, Wissahickon, Amy Ginsberg, Upper Perkiomen, Judy McGinnis, Norristown area, Sharon Mausch, Methacton, Andrea Reese, Jenkintown, Patrick Wicks. Dr. Speaker, the Executive Director of MCIU, provided some updates. She shared that the Pennsylvania Association of School Business Officials, PASBO, had recently granted MCIU CFO, Director of Office Business Services, Sandy Edling, with the renewal of her status as Pennsylvania Certified School Business Administrator for a period of 4 years. MCIU Board approved the calendar for the Intermediate Unit Board meetings for the 2021-2022 school year. The MCIU granted approval of the new American Rescue Act ESSER Health and Safety Plan, and were advised that the existing Pandemic Committee and Workplace Safety Committees are combining to form a new MCIU Health and Safety Committee to allow for ongoing review and open dialogue regarding any health safety concerns from MCIU staff or administration. The MCIU Board approved the following budget items for 2021-2022. Title I, Part A, Improving Basic Programs, Private Rehabilitative Institutions, Office of Professional Learning, Access Administrative Time Study, the Summer Food Service Program, Montco Works, Patent and PDE Events, and Gifted Leadership Services. The MCIU Board approves the following contracted agreements for 2021-22. Food services for the Child and Adult Care Food Program, the Summer Food Services Program, and the National School Lunch Program. Transportation program was approved. Custodial services for MCIU facilities and Head Start locations was approved. Human Resources reported 12 new employees. There was 1 retirement, 9 staff members assigned to support the 2021 extended school year program, 10 staff members assigned to support the Pre-K Counts summer camp program, 15 staff members were assigned to support the Head Start summer camp program. 10 temporary hires were made for the Montco Works Now program. The MCIU Board approved continuations of contracted technology agreements to support school districts for 2021-2022 school year. the continuation of data support services for Souderton Area School District, and a continuation of the technology leadership services for Pottstown School District. The MCIU board approved a number of contracted service agreements to support its many trainings, programs, and services. Upcoming dates, Monday, August 23rd, 8:30 a.m., MCIU All-Staff Opening Day. This will be at North Penn. August 2021, date and time to be determined, will be the next MCIU Head Start Policy Council meeting. Wednesday, August 25th at 6:45 p.m. will be the next meeting of the Board of Directors. Friday, October 8th will be the grand opening celebration of the Early Learning Academy in Norristown. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. England. Next, we have the Eastern Center for Arts and Technology, Mr. Burdell Williams.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. I'd like to just share some brief highlights of the meeting of the Joint Operating Committee from June 16th, 2021. There were a variety of actions in the report. We reported under the President's report, every year there's an annual awards night that Eastern holds. This year, they were able to do it on Upper Morelands football field, which was much different than the year prior. There were 123 students who were awarded for a total award gift of about $36,000, and that money is awarded to those students from the Eastern Foundation, which is a nonprofit that is very much so similar to the Cheltenham School District Foundation. Under the President's report also, there were a series of acknowledgements of placements for particular roles, one of them being Worcester Pearlstein as the school solicitor, also bringing on Treasurer Liam Gallagher, Secretary Mary Martin, and also the Superintendent of Record, Dr. Jill Takis, for terms of various lengths, all starting on July 1st of 2021, and also approval of BGA&F as the school auditor. The Joint Operating Committee approved all financial reports and disbursements for May. And then the most important part of the Joint Operating Committee meeting, which is the acknowledgement of the Student of the Month, which was Amelia Wanders, who was a senior at Abington Senior High School and in the cosmetology program, but has finished her time at both Eastern and in Abington, and I did not get a note on what she would be doing after she was done, but very happy to support her and celebrate her for being Student of the Month for June. Under Academic Affairs, there was a approval of the committee minutes from the Academic Advisory Committee, Executive Advisory Committee. In addition, there was some notifications just regarding enrollment for the summer cosmetology program. There were 48 students. The June 1st registration was 682 students with 643 enrolled, which is up just a little from where we were this time last year, which is really exciting. Under Academic Affairs, there was approval of a new program. That new program is the Exercise and Sport Science program. At our last Cheltenham School District Board meeting, legislative meeting, I did share some details of that program. Other details can be found on the Eastern Center for Arts and Technology website. There was also approval of the Executive Advisory Committee membership, as well as Occupational Advisory Committee membership. There was approval of the 2021 marketing plan and program reviews of collision repair and protective services. All programs will run. There was also approval at that point of the Eastern Health and Safety Plan, which really centers around the perspective that all programs at Eastern will run full-time for the 2021-2022 school year. and then also approval of the Eastern goals under the policy committee. Those goals can be found on the Eastern website as well. One that I'm most particularly proud of is goal number 3, which is to promote equity in all facets of Eastern's operations, to become a culturally proficient school that recognizes and values diversity and inclusion. Not necessarily as an extension of that, but as a place where we've set a pretty solid ground in Eastern, was approval of the Memorandum of Understanding for Eastern Center for Arts and Technology with the Upper Moreland Police. That Memorandum of Understanding has some significant edits that were really driven by the energy from the Cheltenham community, which again, very exciting that the Upper Moreland Police were really willing to collaborate with Eastern through a series of meetings with the Joint Operating Committee and also Dr. Plesnarski. Again, significant amount of collaboration and back and forth, and it was some very exciting activities that we were able to progress on. Under personnel affairs, there was a series of approvals for some specific roles, some retirements from some long time, but many short time employees, some leave of absences that were approved, and also a salary guide, and also some appointments in some various roles. There was a significant amount of energy around training supervisors. So there were, at least 10 to 12 that were approved. And then moving on to financial facilities and financial affairs, there was approval of various items, mostly conversation around a disposal of Eastern vehicles and approval of specific transfers in line with board policy and timing of those budgetary transfers relative to the Joint Operating Committee. And the last item was the appointment of Carolyn Riley, a board member from the Jenkintown School Board, as the PSBA voting delegate to represent Eastern for 2022 school year. The next Joint Operating Committee meeting is scheduled for tomorrow, Wednesday, August 11th at 8 p.m. And those meetings are still being held virtually, and the link to that meeting can be found at Eastern's website, eastech.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burdell Williams, for that report. And next we have Dr. Hacker for the superintendent's report, and that will include the approval of the 2021-2022 Cheltenham School District Preliminary Health Report and Safety Plan.
Thank you, Mrs. Henry. Yes, the health and safety plan is attached, and I'd like to remind everyone that that is a fluid document, that as conditions change and as we need to perhaps implement either more stringent procedures or hopefully even relax upon current procedures, we will be revising that health and safety plan along the way in order to reflect any of those changes. The plan has already been uploaded into our ESSER 3 eGrants site at the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And as I said, if we need to make revisions on it moving forward, we will include those revisions and upload it once again to that site. Our ESSER 3 funding grant is dependent upon that submission of the health and safety plan. As everyone is now aware, we will be enacting a masking requirement for all students, staff, and visitors to all of our buildings beginning next Monday. We strongly recommend prior to Monday that everyone in our buildings please begin the process of wearing masks. I know we have an event tomorrow evening and the following evening at Cedar Brook Middle School for orientation for parents. We would request again that parents please mask up as they're coming into the building for that. I'm also very pleased to announce that in conjunction and with the support of our Professional Staff Association, the Cheltenham Education Association, and our Business Employees Group, the BEC. We have the support from both of those groups to pursue mandatory either vaccination of individuals, or for those who are unvaccinated, we will be asking them to submit to weekly testing. We still have many logistics and details to work out about that program. I've been in touch, of course, with our attorneys regarding what those details are and what is required in order for us to pursue our next steps. But of course, the most important aspect of that was garnering the support of the leadership of both of those unions, which we now have. So I want to thank them for that and for their cooperation and understanding of the fact that we really do want to be able to move forward with this to assure not only our families, but also our other staff members as well, that their colleagues are taking the necessary steps in order to assure everyone will be protected as we move into what appears to be a very dangerous phase of the spread of the Delta variant this school year. I'd also like to announce that unfortunately, we have two very valuable staff members that we are losing as we move towards the start of the school year. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. David Teasdale, our facilities director, for all of the wonderful work that he has done in Cheltenham over the past several years. Although I've only worked with Dave for a very short period of time, I've noted his attention to detail, his responsiveness, his prompt ability to respond to inquiries that he's had, particularly over the summer when there's so much work to be done, particularly on the outside of all of our buildings throughout the district. I know how committed he is to the maintenance and the upgrades that we have in our facilities. So I want to thank him for all of his hard work. And of course, we wish him well in his next venture. Similarly, I want to bid farewell to Ian Sandberg, one of our supervisors of special education, as he moves on to a promotion and a new position in another district as well. And thank Ian for all of his work and certainly wish him well as he moves on to a position with a lot of responsibility where we're sure he'll perform in an outstanding manner. I want to welcome two new administrators into the district, John Seaman, who has already begun as our new athletic director. We're very happy to be able to welcome John to our athletic department, and we're looking forward to his working with all of our coaches, particularly as we're entering into a fall sports season. And we certainly hope that he'll be as attentive as we've had from Mr. Blackwell in the past, particularly to the health and safety of all of our student athletes. Given his past experience and many years as a previous athletic director, I have no doubt that will be the case. And we are also fortunate to welcome someone who is actually a current employee of our district, Jessica Keene, our home and school visitor, who did an outstanding job in the rounds of interviews that we held for the very challenging and difficult position of Director of Student Services. And I say that because replacing Dr. Cheryl Horsey is, of course, no easy task. But I think we all agree that Jessica really stepped up to the plate. She is extraordinarily committed and dedicated to the families of this school district. She talked frequently about many of the home visits that she's made to help support families and students. And I know that she will bring to her new role the same level of caring and commitment exhibited by Dr. Horsey during her tenure in the district as well. And just a few other points I also wanted to make. I know we have several new individuals who are being approved tonight as new employees in the district. And of course, most notable in that group are our new teachers, who we will welcome back next week for new teacher induction. I'm extraordinarily happy to report that I've met with an overwhelming number of the ones who are being appointed to their roles this evening. I want to commend our principals and other cabinet level administrators who sat in on all of those interviews. We had teachers who sat in on those interviews as well. It's a wonderful group of young people who are really eager to begin their work here in Cheltenham. So I was happy to have the opportunity to meet each one of them and to speak with them and to certainly note their enthusiasm about working in our district. And this week, finally, all of the cabinet level and building level administrators are involved for 3 days in an annual leadership seminar. I want to thank Dr. Smith and many of our other administrators for helping to organize. This is 3 days of rather intensive professional development and informational sessions for all of us. Mr. Diazio actually came today and spoke to us about the MOU and the specific changes that were incorporated into it this time and the revisions that were made. We have several experts from the University of Pennsylvania, 2 of whom met with us today to talk about their focused work on members of our African American community in our schools and ensuring that they have access to rigorous high-level coursework. They will be working directly with students and hearing from them over the course of the year. Dr. Barbara Moore-Williams will be one of our speakers this week, along with 2 other individuals who work on equity and cultural proficiency from the University of Pennsylvania, and a number of other individuals who are scheduled to come in and work with us, as well as our own administrative team who are sharing information about things such as our assessment calendar and other issues that we're facing as we begin a new school year. So I just again want to thank all of those individuals for giving us their time in order to review those things before the start of the school year. And that is my report for this evening. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to share this information with all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Hacker. Before we move on to discussion about the the health and safety plan, I want to announce, and it's me being remiss, the passing of a previous board member, Brian Malloy, who served on the board for many years and was, very highly regarded on the board and in the community. So with that, I'd like to first open it up to our board members who may want to make comments about Brian Malloy.
Pam, I'm sorry, Miss Henry, I'd like to thank you for recognizing Mr. Malloy. Mr. Malloy and I ran to serve on the school board in 2013, and he served for 4 years on this board. He served for 4 years with myself and Miss Haywood, and I believe 2 years with Mr. Fishbein and Mr. Cohen. Brian was a retired educator. He was very active in the community, and he was just a good person, a good friend to many, many people. He is sadly missed. He is survived by his wife, Janet, and 2 sons, and they live in Cheltenham. So it is a loss for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. England. Ms. Haywood?
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Henry. It's really with a heavy heart that I acknowledge the passing of Mr. Malloy, more fondly known as Brian. He started a pickleball league in our community, of which there were a lot of people that participated, but more importantly, as a board member, Brian always brought a reflective viewpoint on any decision-making that we had to make. He was always very intentional about, getting additional information, but he always did it also with a light heart behind him. I know I will miss Brian, and I really want to extend my condolences to his wife, Janet, and his two sons. So thank you for the opportunity to share a few comments.
Thank you, Ms. Haywood. Mr. Cohen?
Yes, as Mr. England noted, I served with Mr. Malloy for 2 years. I found him to be a very thoughtful and caring individual who was dedicated to the school board and his family. And he was also an honored and respected teacher during his career. And my thoughts and well wishes and thoughts for well-being go out to his family. And again, he will be significantly missed in the community. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Mr. Fishbein?
And one last thing that hasn't been mentioned, everything that has been said, I wholeheartedly agree with. But the other thing he did it with was a great sense of humor, and he really he brought light into a room, and you could tell that he had a tremendous impact on the students that he had the opportunity to teach, because there was an outpouring on Facebook about it after his death. But I also knew some of those students because of personal connections that I had, and they just adored him. He was one of those teachers whose students who had him remembered for their lives. That kind of guy, and he will be sorely missed.
Thank you, Mr. Fishbein. I'd like to move to, as impactful as your comments were, thank you so much for those. Comments on the health and safety plan. And so for the board discussion, if you all have comments, please raise your hand. Ms. Haywood?
Thank you, Ms. Henry. I want to thank Dr. Hacker for the flexibility in looking at our health and safety plan in light of the changing conditions in both not just Montgomery County, but in other surrounding counties as well. I think as we go forward, as you indicated, the health and safety plan is subject to further review and revision based on both the science and research and recommendations, both at the national level and the local level, paying strict attention to any of the data that we're getting, particularly from Montgomery County Department of Public Health. I really am very appreciative of the time and work that went into modifying the health and safety plan in light of current conditions. And this evening, I will be voting in support of approving the 2021-2022 health and safety plan, which clearly, as we have been most focused on, is the health and safety of our staff, our teachers, our students, our families, and our visitors into our schools. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haywood. Mr. Cohen?
Yes, thank you. I want to echo Ms. Haywood's comments and also add, while I'm not asking for this, I don't believe that legally we can do it in terms of requiring vaccinations. I am heavily suggesting that anybody that can be vaccinated that's not been vaccinated yet, including staff, teachers, parents, other people that visit our schools, please get vaccinated. If you have concerns, reservations, please talk to a medical professional, a family doctor, or somebody else in the medical community. And again, I just want to encourage people, for the good of the community and families and people that cannot be vaccinated in our schools, and we under students, to please try to get vaccinated if you've not been vaccinated yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Ms. Lohman?
Thank you, Ms. Henry. Sorry about the lack of raise hand feature on my Zoom. Can't seem to find it. I had a comment and a kind of a question, I guess. The comment, first of all, is it's my understanding that the Lower Merion School District has been asking families to voluntarily disclose the vaccination status of their children 12 years and older. I was curious as to whether or not that's something that we have considered, just basically so they can kind of, I think, get a handle on sort of who's vaccinated where. But I just throw that out there as a comment. The other question I have was wondering, Dr. Hacker, or maybe, I don't know who the appropriate person would be to answer this, but is to talk about how this health and safety plan interacts with the emergency instructional plan that we're being asked to approve as part of the educational affairs portion of the board meeting.
To answer your question, first of all, there's actually very little alignment. The only alignment between the two is that the health and safety plan obviously would have to be revised if, because pandemic conditions warranted, we would have to revert to either a hybrid model for instruction or a 100% virtual model. That information would simply go back into the health and safety plan as part of the revisions. But as far as the flexible instructional plan, the intent of that is really to seek approval for the instructional process that allows for hybrid or virtual instruction. The purpose of the health and safety plan is really more, it is less about instruction and more really about the measures, the protocols, and the practices that we will have in place in specific areas such as building cleanliness, ventilation, sanitation, and so forth, as well as social distancing, distances between desks, masking, and so forth. So one is really more health related and the other is an instructional programming type of plan.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lohman. Mr. Burdell Williams?
Yep, thank you. I won't repeat any of the great commentary that has been shared by my colleagues. I do want to just thank the community for their input and feedback on the topic of masking or not masking. As one board member, I'm always excited when we receive communication from the community on whatever topic. It helps inform our decisions and really allows us to make an informed decision. And again, I, as one board member, appreciate the community for the feedback, both, for and against, but in this particular case, any amount of feedback from my perspective is applauded. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Schultz?
Thank you. I wanted to thank everyone who's been involved in thinking about this document and developing it to where it is, and also to thank the community for how much care and attention you have in general around safety with this pandemic. And to highlight that, and not just in the past, but also today and going forward, because it's so important that we are able to provide opportunities for our students to be educated, particularly to try to be able to educate them in person. And as we all know, this pandemic is not over, and our ability to continue really is going to rely on our community acting appropriately, being careful, continuing to be cautious. And so just thank you, everybody listening, for being careful. And please, in addition to being vaccinated, if you can, please just continue to take this disease seriously so that way our students are able to meet in person.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Are there any other comments from the board? And seeing none, I'll make a call to the vote. All in favor of the health and safety plan, say aye.
Ms. Henry, was there I don't recall that there was a motion and a second for that approval.
Right, you're right. Motion to approve the health and safety plan.
So made, Mr. Cohen.
Second, Mr. England.
Or second, Mr. England. Thank you, Mr. Diazio, Mr. England, and who made the motion?
I think it was myself.
Mr. Cohen?
Yep, thank you for that. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, so next we will move to the committee reports. And we have Mr. Fishbein for Financial Affairs.
Can you all hear me? Okay. The Financial Affairs Committee met on August 3rd virtually, and the agenda was an update of our 2020-2021 financial results. discussion of our fiscal goals for 21-22 school year, highlighting the BEC union contract negotiations that are ongoing, the food service RFP, ways that we'll attempt to find cost savings at the building level, and our use of ESSER funds. I'll summarize each of those very briefly. You can find the PowerPoint presentation that was used for that meeting to get all of the details on the district website under the August 3rd, 2021 Financial Affairs Committee meeting. And if you click on the presentation, you'll see what I'm about to summarize. Last year's finances were a roller coaster because of COVID. We had pretty substantial savings in some areas. We had increased costs, especially in charter school funds that went with students who left the district to go to charter schools. We had significant savings in transportation. And when it all came out in the wash, we went from having a projected use of fund balance or deficit of 1.1 million to a surplus that will go back into fund balance from our use of it in the recent past of approximately $2 million. The fiscal goals for 2021-2022 are to keep that momentum to ensure the district's financial stability and to stop the use of fund balance. And in order to do that, because transportation costs are going to go back to what they were, we don't know yet much about charter school returns. We are looking to obviously reduce our dependency on fund balance. We will look at staff reductions through attrition, and making sure that we fully analyze and evaluate the need for staff in all areas. We will attempt to reduce reoccurring expenditures at the building level. And as you'll see in a little bit, we'll look at recapturing charter school students. We also discussed the current state of charter school student returns, and that number here, excuse me, trying to scroll through my notes, bear with me. I don't have that there. I believe we have already achieved some recouping of charter school students who left last year but are coming back this year. We talked about the ESSER funds, and we have a total of $5.9 million in federal funding that is for one-time use, not to be used for our operating expenses, but for things that have to do with COVID, including new plant and equipment to keep the building safe, and funds to address learning loss resulting from COVID. We have BEC contract negotiations going on currently, and that contract actually expired on June 30th. Our salaries and benefits to BEC and CEA and the professional and the administrator union are approximately 70% of our budgeted expenditures. So those are places where we will need to look in order to continue our work at reducing our structural deficit. We have a food service contract that we will be putting out to RFP, and that will be part of the work of the Financial Affairs Committee in the next few months. And here's the charter school update. There are approximately 22 students currently, as of the time of this meeting, will have re-enrolled in Cheltenham schools. We have one item I always get confused, Mr. Diazio. Do we do this at the end of the Financial Affairs Committee meeting report, or do we do this when Mr. Schott reports at the end of the meeting? Approval of non-resident tuition rates.
You can do that in Mr. Schott's consent agenda report later in the meeting because it is listed there.
Okay. And then the next Financial Affairs Committee meeting is on September 14th, directly following the Facilities Committee meeting that starts at 7 o'clock, and that will be done by Zoom. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fishbein. Next, we have facilities. Mr. Engel, I believe you're giving a report.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Henrique. The Facilities Committee met on Tuesday, August 3rd. It was, as was noted, the last meeting of Mr. Teasdale, Facilities Director, who had been with us for a couple of years and had worked hard to get our facilities into top shape. He provided an update on building and maintenance items, starting with the high school. Lights were getting near completion for installing in the gymnasium. Programming was to be completed the following week. Football field scoreboard. We had a issue with the school, the scoreboard. It does not operate. The manufacturer and dealers inspected for repairs and advised the district that this scoreboard is obsolete and would need to be replaced. The cost to replace the scoreboard is $23,971. Estimated time frame is 4 to 6 weeks for supply and installation. Funds would be taken from the capital budget. Cedarbrook, there was no update. Elkins Park, the gym floor repair work completed due to water damages from the roof. The roof was patched up and work was completed. For Cheltenham, Glenside, and Myers Elementary buildings, there was no update on maintenance. The administration building, air conditioning window units were being installed to replace existing units that are no longer operational in those offices. District-wide maintenance, the HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, all filters will be replaced in all systems across the district. These filters are changed 4 times per year. Air purifiers within the high school and Elkins Park, the pre-filters will be changed out over the summer break, and the HEPA filters will be changed out during the winter break. Painting continues in the high school. Once completed, Elkins Park will be painted as per the high school. Any identified areas and other buildings will be painted as needed. Parking lots and road markings are being reviewed, and where necessary will be painted or touched up. Water bottle fillers have arrived and are being installed across the district. These are replacing the regular water fountains, and these allow students to refill a reusable drinking container with water. There was some storm damage, significant tree damage across the district from the 2 storms we had in July. We had a contractor who came out to assess the work, and the schedule was put together to remove the trees. I believe that the trees that the main trees that came down have been removed. Preventive maintenance work orders will be completed as scheduled, and general summer works, checking restrooms, sinks, windows, doors, continues in preparation for the opening of school. Grounds update, mulching, all flower beds will be mulched across the district. Playgrounds will have playground mulch installed and general cleanup. Playground inspections will be completed over the summer. and trimming of trees and bushes across the district as required. Custodial, district-wide, all classrooms will be detailed, cleaned. This includes restrooms and basically all areas of the school buildings. Furniture, dependent on the reopening guidance, classroom furniture will be returned and set up from storage as accordingly. Room changes, moving furniture per the guidance from principals, and any staff changes are being handled. Summer programs, we've had a heavy summer of daily programs. Cleaning still needs to take place even while the building is being used by community organizations and district. Floor care, identified areas are stripped and waxed as needed across the schools. From capital work, here on the high school wall, the demo of the damaged stones began. This is the wall that's outside of the theater. The exterior of the building, there was some stone that had fallen due to rusted steel. The steel prep and the welding of all the pieces has begun. The windcoat pipe repair, still awaiting a schedule for the start of this project. This is one that we've been talking about for some time. Mr. Teasdale was hopeful that we would have confirmed date by this week, and hopefully this work is either progressing or will be starting soon. Cedar Brook gym floor repair. Work has commenced on the damaged floor section in the Cedar Brook gym. Material will arrive this week to start relaying the floor. Should be noted that the damage to the floor in the Cedar Brook gym will be covered by insurance, by district insurance. The pipe replacement at Windcoat, this question has been asked previously. It is not going to be covered by insurance. This construction was done too long ago, and unfortunately, the failure didn't occur within a time where we could have filed a claim. Facility bookings, as of the time of that meeting, external bookings were open to the public. All information in relation to classifications and fee schedules is found on the district website under the facilities and maintenance page. There was a question that was raised by a community member regarding the Cedar Brook gym floor and Windcoat. As I said, the question was whether these could be covered by district insurance, and as was the case with the gym floor, it is covered. Unfortunately, the glycol pipe at Windcoat was not covered. The next meeting of the Facilities Committee will be Tuesday, September 14th at 7 p.m. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. England. Next, we have the Liaison Group, Mr. Cohen.
Yes, thank you. The Liaison Group met on June 28th. The first item discussed was Holy Sepulchre Cemetery about a real estate assessment issue. Next, there was a conversation about Linwood Hall and the property in terms of maintenance and the future of that property. Following that, there was a discussion about the Township and School District Administration buildings and about the possibility of working together long-term to identify a potential joint solution for both those buildings that are old and also are somewhat obsolete. There was next discussion about traffic calming measures across the township and plans for additional measures. Following that, there was a discussion and review of environmental initiatives in the township and also the school district, and how to educate the community about the environment and how residents can contribute. Following that, there's an introduction of the new Township Finance Officer, Mark Lieberson. And by way of record, Mr. Lieberson is a former school board member. Following that, there was a conversation about school taxes and about the impact of school taxes and the reasoning for school taxes in terms of their rates. There was a discussion with the chief of police about various issues. There was a brief discussion about a literacy library box at Linwood Gardens. Following that, there was a discussion on expanding participation and diversity on advisory boards for the township. Next, there was a discussion about the school's expectations for opening their facilities to outside organizations in the fall. And following that, there was an appreciation from the township about proper reactions on some recent racially insensitive public incidents and what we can do to strengthen and improve relations. And by recent, again, that goes back to June and a little bit earlier, being that the meeting was held in late June. Following that, there was discussion on the township share of recovery funds of federal funds and an initiative the township's working on to try to get a proportionate share of funds to get them increased. There was a brief conversation about land development updates, and the next meeting is scheduled for September 20th at 8 a.m. That completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Next, we have the Policy Committee. Mr. Schultz is going to report out on that. There are two policies for adoption, 3 for first read and 3 for AR review. Mr. Schultz?
Thank you, Ms. Henry. That covered my report. No, just kidding. The Policy Committee met on Wednesday, June 23rd at 8:00 a.m. via Zoom. There were the first items of business were old business. The first of those was Policy and AR 142, Use of Movies in the Classroom, which is being recommended for repeal as its contents are incorporated into other curriculum policies already. The next item of old business was Policy and AR 225, Students and the Police, which, as proposed, will be renamed to Relationship with Law Enforcement and is being updated to reflect the new Memorandum of Understanding between the district and Cheltenham Township Police Department. This policy is being presented for adoption this evening. And the MOU, which is already signed, anybody who is interested in reading it, exists at cheltenham.org/MOU and will also be listed alongside the revised policy if/when approved. The next item of old business was a presentation of AR 829, Equity. This AR provides specific practices and steps that the district is taking as part of the equity policy passed last year in September. This AR will not be presented for approval because, as an administrative regulation, it does not need board approval. The next item was a presentation of AR 215, Computing GPA. Again, this is an administrative regulation, so it won't be voted on tonight, or rather will be put into place, and it has been modified to fix an issue in the formula for weighted courses when calculating GPA. There was new business discussed as well, some of which is being presented as a first read this evening. The first item was Policy 351, 451, and 551, Drug and Substance Abuse, which is being consolidated as proposed to be consolidated into a single policy, 351. The next item was Policy 802, Electronic Signatures and Documents, which is a new policy that would allow the district to collect electronic signatures in certain circumstances. The last item of discussion was Policy and AR 218, Student Discipline. This is related to a larger conversation that the district and community have been having around the role of discipline and policing in the district. So this was an initial conversation around this specific policy. The committee provided some feedback to administration regarding desired changes, which the committee has asked to be presented, those changes at a later date. The next policy committee meeting will be held on August 25th at 8:00 a.m. via Zoom. And that concludes my report. And so I would ask for a motion for the adoptions and repeals as listed of policy 142 and 225.
So moved.
Mr.
Second.
Fishman?
Second, Julie Haywood.
Thank you, Ms. Haywood. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, I call the question.
Wait.
Was that something?
I see a hand raised.
Oh, I am so sorry, Ms. Haywood. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Schultz. Hard to see all the hands raised on the side of the screen. Just wanted to comment, while this is not something that we're adopting, I do think it's important to mention, as Mr. Schultz indicated, that the AR for the equity policy is at least being posted and is available for review. This AR was developed by the combined efforts of the administration with feedback from the board and the community. as it relates to how do we implement really our equity policy. This is yet the next step. We're looking probably to go forward with some equity audit at some point so that we can have more clarity in terms of how our AR aligns with our policies, practices, and procedures over time. So again, I just wanted to point that out. It's not related specifically to the two items that we are approving this evening, but wanted to at least mention that because it's an important step, continuing step.
Thank you, Ms. Haywood. So we have a first and second. We'll do this by vote. And all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And the vote carries. Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Thank you.
And so next we have our legislative update from Ms. Haywood.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. The Montgomery County School Board Legislative Committee met on June the 24th via Zoom. The focus of the meeting was a final push for charter school reform and a discussion at the time about the proposed state budget allocation for special education and general education funding. This evening, I'll provide an update on legislation impacting public education at both the federal and the state levels that have arisen since the June legislative meeting. At the federal level, Mr. Fishbein had referenced the legislature providing additional money to states for elementary and secondary school emergency relief or ESSER funding. I will not repeat the summary that Mr. Fishbein provided, but just suffice it to say that we did receive additional funding from the federal government that came down to the state and then ultimately to our school district. And we are going to be using that additional funding very wisely to really assist our students for social and emotional learning, for academic loss, and other things that we're permitted to under the ESSER funding. Just turning a little bit to another topic, as many of you are aware, in the past several months, the legislature has been working on a bipartisan effort to pass the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. The bill passed by the U.S. Senate includes funding for broadband, lead pipe removal in schools and child care centers, energy efficiency improvements in schools, and clean energy school buses. While the debate on this legislation is still ongoing, we hope that with the educational provisions that are in there, some of that money will also flow down to Cheltenham School District and really benefit our students. As schools prepare to reopen in a few weeks, the U.S. Department of Education provided a return to school roadmap on August 2nd to help guide schools in their reopening efforts. The roadmap prioritizes the health and safety of students, school staff, and families, builds school communities, and supports students' social, emotional, and mental health and acceleration of academic achievement. Cheltenham School District, like many other school districts in Montgomery County and in the nation, will rely on the Return to School Roadmap and other research-based resources as we finalize our reopening plans. We also learned on August the 6th, the U.S. Department of Education provided additional resources to states and school districts to fulfill requirements of maintaining equity guidance requirements for ESSER funding under the American Rescue Plan, or ARP. Section 2004 of ARP includes new maintenance of equity provisions that are a condition of receiving funds under ESSER. These provisions are essential to ensuring that essential resources are meeting the needs of students who have been subject to long-standing opportunity gaps in our educational system. Turning now to state legislative action, and again, the state is currently out of session and has been since the kind of the beginning of July. But since then, as everyone is aware, that Governor Wolf did sign the proposed budget. And I feel like so much time has transpired since our last meeting, but I thought it would be good to highlight some pieces of that adopted budget. The state budget for 21-22 includes line item increases, including for an additional $300 million for basic education funding, $200 million of that will be added to the fair funding formula, $100 million for 100 most underfunded school districts. And that's basically a level up funding for the basic education funding that each school district received. We did not receive any level up funding this year. Under the 21-22 state funding, special education funding was funded at an additional $50 million and early education funding at $30 million. While those are significant dollars, I just wanted to be clear that for us in Cheltenham, we didn't receive those dollars. We received, however, a little over $5 million for basic education funding, which is an increase of $261,000 from our 2021 basic education allocation. We also received about a little over $2.5 million, an increase from the 2021 special education funding. And we did receive the same amount of a little over $340,000 from the state for the Ready to Learn grant. Unfortunately, missing from the state budget again was any significant charter school reform. We will continue, as we did last year, advocating for charter school reform and again challenge any reintroduction of voucher legislation. Additionally, at the end of June, Governor Wolf signed Senate Bill 664 into law, now Act 66 of 2021. The bill entitles a special education student who has reached 21 years of age during the 2021 school year or between the end of the 2021 school year and the beginning of the 21-22 school year and is enrolled for the 2021 school year to attend a school entity for another year if the parent or guardian and the student elects to enroll for the additional year. That same privilege was extended also to general ed students if their child was under 18. And there were, we made that information available on our website. And as a result, there were a few parents that took advantage of Act 66 and decided to enroll their students for an additional year. On June 30th, 2021, Governor Wolf also signed into law Senate Bill 554, now known as Act 65 of 2021. This legislation takes effect September 1 and directly affects school boards. This impacts how we notify the public about our board agendas and timelines for posting all items. Under the legislation, any subject to the Sunshine Act will be required to be posted on the agenda on our internet site 24 hours in advance of the time of the meeting, which we do currently. It also would require us to post the agenda at the location of the meeting, at the principal office location of the school district, and make copies of the agenda available to those in attendance. There are exceptions, however, if the business relates to an emergency involving a clear and present danger to life or property, or the business arises 24 hours before the meeting, and the matter is considered to be what they define as de minimis in nature and does not involve an expenditure of funds or entering into a contract, or the business arises during the conduct of the meeting by a resident or taxpayer. Those are the exceptions to the 24 prior notice of an agenda item. Again, right now, currently the PA General Assembly is out of session until after Labor Day. When they return, they'll start the legislative process again, and any legislation previously introduced but not passed can be reintroduced. I will keep everyone apprised as we go forward of any legislation that is adopted or proposed that could impact public education. Ms. Henry, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haywood. Ms. Haywood, your hand is still raised. And do you have it? Okay, there you go. You took it down. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So now we have our administrative reports, and we're going to start with personnel with Ms. Tolbert Jackson.
Yes, thank you. The following action items are submitted for consent agenda. 1, appointment of administrators, Administrator A. 2, appointment of professional employee A. 3, appointment of temporary professional employees A through H. 4, appointment of long-term substitute teachers A, B, and C. 5, approval of changes in assignment A through L. 6, appointment of support staff, A through F. 7, appointment of summer school and ESY, extended school year personnel, A and B. 8, termination of classified employee, A. 9, approval of leadership stipend positions, A.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. So I'll open it up to the board for discussion if there's any. If so, please raise your hand.
Ms.
And-
Henry, I would move to make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. England.
I'd second that.
Mr. Fishbein, thank you so much. We'll take this by vote. And so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Go on, Ms. Tolbert Jackson.
Thank you. The following are informational items. Retirements, A through F. 2, resignations, A through K. 3 are non-discretionary leaves of absence. And we have 5.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to open it up to the board for any discussion or comment. And I see Ms. Lohman.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. I'd just like to say that regarding the retirements, we have several employees who are retiring who have 20 plus years with the district. And I'd just like to recognize them for their service, particularly Ms. McManus, who I know has been with the district for a long time, and several of the other employees. And I particularly personally want to give a shout out to Ms. Fitzgerald Camp, who was a personal, became really a personal friend and was really wonderful with both of my children at both Glenside Elementary School and EP. So, but I want to congratulate all of them and thank them for their service.
Thank you, Ms. Lohman. Ms. Haywood?
Yes, and likewise, I'd like to recognize Ms. McManus for her service to the school district, for her 21 years and for the class program. And really, especially Ms. Berger. Ms. Berger has been an employee for 34 years and our teacher at Wyncote Elementary School. And she was just phenomenal. I mean, for all of those years, all of my children had Ms. Berger. And I thank her for all of her years of service and all of her creativity. And like Ms. Lohman, I also wanted to thank Ms. Fitzgerald Camp. We both were on the high school board at the same time. And I just remember her always saying and always being very focused on making sure that all the students really got the support from a social and emotional perspective. And I really remember that resonating in my head when we would meet, that was really so very important. And just wanted to wish Mr. Suni Blackwell, really a great future. Wanted to thank Kira Jones, Mr. Ian Sandberg, Keziah Grant, and Mr. Teasdale for all of the work that you've done in our school district. And everyone else as well, but those are the few individuals that I knew a little more personally, so I wanted to call them out. Thank you. Wishing you all well.
Thank you, Julie, and I wish everybody well, to your point. Next, we have Educational Affairs, Dr. Smith.
Good evening. Before I submit my consent agenda, I want to echo the sentiments of what has been shared already about our retirees. And I specifically want to acknowledge Mr. Blackwell. Mr. Blackwell was someone who reported to my office during his time here. I wish him the very best. He really helped to get our athletic program back on track, and he was phenomenal during the switch to remote learning as well as hybrid learning, and making sure that our athletic plan reflected what we were doing during the school day. So I want to thank him. And I also want to individually thank Ms. McManus, who I also work with very closely. I learned so much from her and the folks in her office under her leadership. Her caring for her children and her staff were unmatched, and she will definitely be missed by myself and also other members of the Office of Education. And finally, I want to present as a consent agenda. 1, approval of conferences A through F. 2, approval of educational services.
Excuse me.
3, approval for agreement for an approved private school placement. 4, approval for contract for pediatric therapy. 5, approval for agreement for an approved private school placement. 6, approval of purchase agreement for professional development / learning services A through B. 7, approval of agreements A through B. 8, approval of contract. 9, approval of template. And 10, acceptance of donation.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Motion to approve?
So move, Charles Burdell Williams.
Second, Bill England.
Thank you, Mr. Burdell Williams and Mr. England. And is there any discussion? If so, please raise your hand. And seeing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. And seeing there are no nays, the motion carries. And for the record, I'm an aye. I didn't say it that time. Sorry about that. I didn't realize I had muted myself before and I was still speaking. Next, we have financial affairs with Mr. Schott.
Thank you very much, Ms. Henry. I have 2 items this evening for consent agenda. Number 1, approval of the non-resident tuition rates for the 21-22 school year, and approval of the payments from June 1st, 2021 through July 31st, 2021.
So move to approve those items.
I second that, Julie Haywood.
You're mute, Mrs. Henry.
I waited this long in the meeting to put myself on mute and forget to take myself off. All in favor, say aye. Thank you for the motions, but all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Nay. And the motion carries. So what we have next is public comments on non-agenda items. And so if you have a comment and you are attending via Zoom, you can raise your hand. We'll call on you. You won't have video, but you will have audio. So you'll be able to speak out loud. Or you can also ask questions via CSD board meeting comments at cheltenham.org. I'll repeat that. CSD board meeting comments at cheltenham.org. If you raise your hand or if you submit a comment via email online, please state where you reside in the community. So we will take 5 minutes, a 5-minute break so that people can add their comments or raise their hand. And the time is 8:17, so we will wait until 8:22. So we'll take a brief pause to allow people to either add comments to the CSD board meeting comments at cheltenham.org or raise their hand. Okay, we'll move to, we have one email. So Mr. Diazio, I'll ask you to read that email.
Yes. Okay, the email that I have comes from Rebecca Condict of Elkins Park. And the comment reads, will there be a separate meeting to thoroughly present the health and safety plan to the community and address parent questions? Parents have many questions such as, how will we accomplish spacing kids out during lunch when they will have to take their masks off to eat? Will they be using auditoriums again in schools where the auditorium is not already part of the cafeteria? Will they use the gym or other rooms in K-4 schools? How much space will be between desks in classrooms? Will classes be at full capacity? What is the cap on number of students per class? What options will there be for families who do not feel comfortable sending their children to in-person school, or whose children have underlying conditions which put them more at risk from COVID? In the spring, Dr. Smith said that it was possible the only option offered for children whose parents did not feel it was safe to send them in person would be asynchronous, but that it would be determined based on the number of students that fell into that. Is that still the thinking? If so, what is the plan to determine how many students are expected to stay home? Will the reopening committees be reconvening? What will recess be like? Will students still be able to have snacks if they have lunch at odd hours? I know this is a big issue for the high school. Will parent volunteers be permitted in the buildings this year? Will school events be permitted to take place this year, such as carnival, multicultural night, storybook parade, etc.? How will the school music program work? Will music lessons for wood instruments be offered remotely so that our students do not have to be blowing their instruments in a room together? What about performances? What about chorus? What sports will be permitted, and will masking be required for all practices and competitions, whether indoor or outdoor? Thank you, Rebecca. I do have a second email that came in a moment ago from Lisa Hesbacher from Wyncote, and the comment reads, good evening, everyone. I have been listening intently to this evening's legislative school board meeting. Of particular interest to me are the details of the health and safety plan ahead of the start of this upcoming school year. We would like to encourage greater communication with parents and all stakeholders regarding this concern. I'd like to ask the school board to convene a district town hall, as was done last summer, to make a presentation of the complete updated health and safety plan, allow for public comments, concerns, and questions. A few of my specific questions include, what is the plan for social distancing measures in the school? How will the classrooms and school buildings look and feel to students, teachers, visitors? Will there continue to be directional signage in the hallways and 6 feet spacing signage? How will bathroom use, cafeteria use, public areas, gyms, etc. change with the new plan versus last year? What is the plan for safety and transportation safety on our buses? Will students eat in the cafeterias? Will hand sanitizer be provided throughout the buildings? How will these changes be communicated effectively to all stakeholders, including students? And will a virtual option be made available? Thank you for your response. Those are, I don't have any additional comments that were received via email.
Thank you, Mr. Diazio. And we have noted those questions, those comments, and excuse me, a communication around them will be forthcoming. Next, we have response to prior public questions. Dr. Hacker, I think there was one.
Yes, Mrs. Henry, that is correct. The question was, how will you work to protect students from the school to prison pipeline? And do you believe police have a role in our schools? So I can give a brief answer about that. Our goal, and we actually discussed this today extensively with all of our administrators, particularly our building level administrators. Our goal is always to try to develop proactive ways of helping our students to cope, to address any behavioral challenges or issues that arise during the school year. And our preference is to do this with our own staff. You know, we have trained individuals, whether it's guidance counselors, social workers, psychologists, or even our very own staff members, including our support staff and our professional staff who form intensive relationships with our students. And we rely on those relationships in order to work with our students, to provide them with internal supports within the buildings, and to hopefully avoid unnecessary involvement of the police for issues that we feel that we can certainly address in the schools. What we talked about today quite extensively was really identifying the specific restorative practices that we currently have in place and that we intend to use over the course of the school year, to also specifically identify the positive behavioral supports that we have in place as well to help students understand and recognize when we believe that they are exhibiting positive behaviors as well. So we believe that these practices really work best in order to help our students face the daily challenges that they encounter when they come to school. The police do play an important role in our schools, and I would be remiss if I didn't remind everyone that we certainly rely on the police when unfortunately we have threats from the outside. Their primary role in society as well as in schools is to protect citizenship. And we need this in schools as well as within other institutions within our society. So when there are threats, particularly from the outside, whether in the case of armed intruders or other issues, sometimes non-custodial parents who threaten kidnapping of children, we sometimes do need the intervention of the police. And let me take this opportunity to remind everyone of incidents that were tragic that have occurred, such as Sandy Hook, and Columbine, and Paducah, Kentucky. So there are instances when we need to rely on the police, and that is all the more reason why it is absolutely critical to establish a good working relationship with the police. I'm looking forward to a meeting this week, actually, with Chief Fry, so that we can talk about a mutual understanding of our roles. So hopefully that addresses the question that was raised previously. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hacker. Future meetings are listed on the agenda. I do have one question, which is there a communications meeting on September 23rd?
I think we established that there will be one that will be scheduled for that date, and we will put that on the calendar on the website as well.
Great, thank you. Just wanted to point that out.
Yep.
So that concludes our meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, Julie.
I was wondering how many seconds we were going to get.
Nah.
Julie, thank you. Julie seconded meeting and second motion. And so we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.